Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us on a Wednesday afternoon for this episode of TWG Plus's webinar series. Really appreciate you all spending a little bit of time with us. Today we're going to be talking about how to develop an award-winning publication strategy. This is a chance for us to sort of peel back the onion a little bit, let you see a little bit about how we work internally at TWG Plus, and to really give you some insight into how to get the most out of your print publication suite, out of your budget, let you know how to get started, how to really prep your team, choose the right team, and make sure that you're making a good investment that's going to have a great impact and is really going to be an enjoyable experience for you as you develop your publications, but also give you publications that are going to have high impact for you. So I thought the best way to do that would be to invite our creative director at TWG Plus, December Lambeth, to join us, and to really get her insight as somebody who has worked with all kinds of educational clients on everything from search campaigns through full institutional rebrands, and who has worked both in the higher ed sector and in the private sector as well, and really to have her share some of her insights. So welcome, December.
Thank you, Chris.
So, why don't we start with the beginning? Folks that are on the call today represent a wide range of institutions, and, from being in their desk, I know that on the enrollment side of the house, some schools have something as simple in their publication suites as a view book and a travel piece that their recruiters are going out with. Others have just thousands of brochures all over their office. There's financial aid pieces, transfer pieces, military pieces. There's individual program brochures. It can be daunting thinking about a publications project. So let's start at the beginning. If you were approaching a project
Sure.
like this, what's the best way to get started?
Well, right off the bat, you need to start with establishing a set of goals, and that'll help you plan out that suite. What do you want to achieve with these pieces? What are they for? Are they recruitment purposes? Are you just gathering general information, or are you trying to get more of a direct response like apply or visit or deposit? Who is your demographic? Are they undergrads or grads, transfer students, international students? You really want to be deliberate with the information that you include into your publications so you get the right action from the right demographic. What pieces do you need? Do you need brochures? Do you need digital advertising? Do you need big publication suites or, outdoor signage even? Also consider your timeline. A lot of times we need to make sure all this is completed during a summer and ready to go before the school year kicks off. So you want to give yourself plenty of time to be prepared and have all of your pieces in hand so you're not rushing around and trying to get things done at the last minute. And then always be aware of your budget, and always make sure whatever team you're working with is aware of your budget. And between doing really good planning and staying on time, you should be able to stay within budget pretty easily. And then the last thing I like to do is tell my clients to create a wish list. What do you really, really want to do that you might think isn't in your budget, but honestly, the right partner will be able to help you figure out if it can be included in your goals.
That's great. Thank you, Dee. And I know, let me stop there real quickly and just let the audience know. We're going to go through a series of questions today with Dee, enjoy our conversation for about a half hour, but then we really want to open it up to questions and answers at the end. I'm sure I know right there in what Dee just said. I have some follow-up questions that I'd like to ask. If you do too, please put them into the chat bar on the lower right side of your command center here for GoToWebinar. And when we're done with our conversation with December, we'll open it up to questions and we'll get to everybody's. But please don't forget them, and please feel free to ask as we go. So, Dee, you mentioned there, you sort of ended on a neat note, saying that once you've kind of figured out what your priorities are, really started to think about what your needs are, the next step is really putting together a team, and the strength of your team and the strength of your relationship with that team, whether it's internal designers with your own marketing team or whether it's working with an external agency like TWG Plus or others, it's a big deal, and the health of that relationship is going to influence the health of the project. How would you recommend choosing a team? How can I figure out who's the right person for us to work with?
Well, Chris, that could be almost as a daunting process as trying to figure out what are the pieces you need and the goals that you have to accomplish. But at the end of the day, you want to pick an agency or a team that, number one, you feel comfortable with. I mean, that's just a priority, but also that complements your needs. You also want them to get you excited about the new work ahead and communicate clearly and can successfully accomplish your goals in the budget you have set. Things that you can look for, like I said, is make sure you have your goals ready and share those goals with them. Set up a Q&A and ask questions. Definitely ask questions towards your goals and things that are going to prove whether that agency knows your demographic, understands your needs. Whether you go through an RFP process or just proposals or just Google, and do some research about agencies and designers out there to do this work, that's a great place to start as well, of course. And then you're going to want to narrow your choices down to 2 or 3. Always give yourself some options, and then you start doing a little more research. Research their website and check out their experience, their design experience, their case studies. How well detailed are their case studies and their success stories. Review their portfolio. Do you like the design work they've done? Do you like the schools or other clients they've worked with that maybe aren't higher education clients? Interview the prospective agencies once you've gotten it narrowed down to your 2 or 3 choices. If you've gone through an RFP process and if you have the opportunity to get them on the phone or have them come in and present to you, certainly take advantage of that. Always get references. It's important to see who they've worked with and how those individuals have responded to them, and that's going to give you a really solid insight to how they're going to work with you. And then make sure that when they're answering your questions that they speak with a language and on a level you're going to understand, that they're not using much of terminology that is hard to understand or comprehend, and that they're speaking to you as a partner and they want to work with you. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to communicate on the same level as a designer or a creative person because we're all a little different.
That is so true, December. One of the fun parts for me, I think, in working with clients who are doing publications projects is, and it's fun, but it can also be, it can be stressful at times, is trying to find a common language. It almost seems like sometimes our partners are, know what they want. They know what their creative tolerance is. They know what they think is cool or flashy or what pops. But then trying to communicate that with a designer or a writer who may have different terminology or may interpret those words differently than the client is, you can end up at sort of loggerheads. So, what is the best way to speak creative? So, in a manner of speaking, what's the best way to communicate what your needs are and what your feedback is to a creative team so that everybody's on the same page and so that you end up achieving your goals and achieving them quickly?
Well, like I said before, that can be a challenge as well, but as long as you communicate, everybody knows communication is key. You're setting yourself and you're setting your partner or agency up for success. Everybody's in for, a really good time and enjoying and coming up with a very successful suite of publications. Always keep your goals in front of you. I'm going to keep going back to that on a regular basis. Use it as a checklist. Make sure the agency you choose puts it in their brief, which is something they're always going to be resourcing as they go through the work and make sure everything stays on point and stays in budget. Provide the full list of requested assets. You'll find a lot of teams you work with are going to have a list of assets. It's going to be like photography, logos, your brand book. All those items are really important and essential, and we'll cover that later on in this discussion, exactly what some of those items are, but that's just going to be a huge help right out of the gates. Are they any hard and fast rules to your brand? Know if you have to use just those 2 colors, if you only have 2 colors and you have to use them no matter what, or if you can't use your logo in any different ways, or if there's any type of limitations to including your athletics logo into your pieces. Do you know exactly what you're looking for? You know, if you have specifics of what interests you and what you like and what you want to see, be direct with those interests. Don't be afraid. You're not going to hurt somebody's feelings. You know, I don't like green, so don't ever put green in it. And a good partner and a good agency, they're going to come back to you and say, well, what if we did it like this? You know, because that's what you want them to do. If they're sold on green and if they can prove to you why that should work and if they convince you, then give them the opportunity to do that. And at the end of the day, though, you're correct. If you don't like green, if they can't convince you otherwise, leave it out. And that leads into like I said, be specific about your likes and dislikes. Feedback needs to be direct and in detail. Like I said, once again, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. I can guarantee you these designers' teachers were way rougher on them. So just tell them, not I don't like that, but I don't like that because, you know, it's too chaotic, or my eyes can't figure out where I need to go. They're not really looking for you to, you know, we don't want anybody to think that they're looking for you to do the job for them, but the more direct you can be, the more efficient they're going to be, and they're going to make you happy and make sure that they can give you what you want.
You know, would it be, hearing what you're saying there, December, would it be fair to say then that part of the onus is also on the designer? And is it fair then for, you know, for the admissions director, for the dean or the communications person to ask the designer, you know, why did you make this choice? You know, or, you know, I said I didn't like green and you put it in there. Why? So that they can get a bit of a better explanation or a better understanding of there was probably a strategic reason behind it. So it's fair then for, if they're not hearing that up front, is it fair to ask the creative for that?
100%. Actually, if the creative's been told that you don't like something, they should tell you what the strategic thought process was behind it and why they think it should work. They should tell you that, you know, I chose this font because of the history of the font, or because of the curve, or because of what it represents. You know, they should totally have some excuse or reason behind why they made those decisions. And once again, if they don't convince you, then let them know, you didn't convince me. I'm still not sold. Can we find another solution? And hopefully they would have already came to the table with a second solution.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks.
You know, just be sure to work with your agency. The more the two of you communicate and collaborate, the better the final pieces will be. For example, we worked really closely with a client, Salve Regina, and we created this interactive, we call them a digital view book, but this one really turned out to be more of an interactive website, and it's for students, their parents, high school guidance counselors. They can come into this site and personalize their experience. We update it on a regular basis. We have, you know, true to life student experiences feeding into the site on a regular basis. So they can see what a day in the life of a college student at Salve Regina is experiencing, from athletics to academics to study abroad. This has become a very successful site, and we had to work really, really closely together with the client on top of their students and their student ambassadors. So the more you work closely together, the more successful your campaign is going to be.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you know, having worked on that project as well, I couldn't agree more that starting with just a broad conversation about goals, but also about who Salve Regina was, you know, and you know, how can we complement your existing efforts, and how can we extend your brand in a way that is going to be new and fresh, but that will still speak and feel like Salve. And you know, you mentioned that word earlier too, brand. Brand is kind of a complicated thing, and when people think about brand, a lot of them don't think of it in the higher ed space. If you do think of it, a lot of times you think of it as being something institutional, maybe bigger than something that a dean of admissions or a VP for enrollment may have the authority to change within the institution. And yet, you know that you want your publications to be new, you want them to be fresh, they have to resonate with Gen Z. So can we talk a little bit more about brand and how much you need to keep to it, and how much flexibility you have within a recruitment publication to change it, alter it, extend it, but make it work for you?
Yeah, it's probably good to start with the definition of brand, or at least a quick little note about what brand actually is, which is the marketing practice of creating a name, a symbol, or design that identifies and differentiates an institution from other institutions. It's your identity. It's who you are. And you should always make your brand work for you. Yes, always challenge your brand. Make it do what it was created for, but never go off brand. Never go out there and decide you're going to maybe use the logo, but that's it. You're not going to follow suit with all the fonts or your primary fonts, or you're going to go find your own color palette or start implementing new types of design elements like circles instead of squares. That's going to pull you away from your identity and keep your pieces from looking like they're part of your institution. Always be knowledgeable of the hard and fast rules. You know, everybody's brand has a set of rules, how you can or can't use your logo, if you can introduce secondary colors, or if there's already secondary colors set up. If you have to stick with this type of type treatment or typography. So know how far you can push that brand. Use your brand to attract your demographic that you are trying to reach. You know, your design pieces for undergrad is going to look different than your design pieces for grad. So is your tone. Always test your brand. Use those focus groups to help lead the decisions and keep your publications on brand. It's important to have focus groups that are diverse as well. Your current student population, you know, your freshmen, and then your seniors, local high school students, your faculty and staff. When you do your focus groups, you should always weigh their responses, though. The individuals you're really paying attention to is the demographic you're trying to hit. So if you're trying to hit high school students, you're going to want to pay attention to what your own students are saying and what the high school focus groups are saying, and then you want to take your faculty and staff thoughts and just make sure that you're staying on brand, because that's what they're going to help you out with. They're going to say, well, I don't think this looks like our institution. Some examples of how we've helped other schools grow or stretch their brands is like Averett University. Averett University has a very specific graduate program and a look and feel for their graduate program, but it keeps with the school's colors, the blue and the yellow. It keeps with the logo style, and there are certain type treatments and graphic treatments that you will find that was also incorporated in the undergrad series, which is the next slide. And this is a much youthful looking piece. This is more about Averett Pride, including their mascot. But you'll see, once again, color palette similar. There are some similar type treatments and some similarities between the two, but still you recognize grad and you recognize undergrad as two different designs still in the same brand. Another example is Hack Community College. Their brand started out in one direction, and they have grown over the past few years, and they keep growing their brand and adding more excitement to it and adding more movement to it, but it still comes back to the basics. It still comes back to their color palette, their type treatments, and their graphic elements.
Yeah, with Hack in particular, it was tricky, I think, too, because, you know, as you demonstrated with Averett, you know, looking at grad and undergrad, when you go into a community college, or where you go, or if you go into, you know, some larger public institutions that are serving more diverse audiences, you know, you've got everybody with a community college, from folks looking to high school students that are looking for traditional start. You've got adults that are looking to come back. You've got folks that want to enter workforce programs. So you could really have, you know, more than the traditional 2 or 3 segments that you're talking to. Your publications may be talking to, you know, 7 to 10 different segments, but you still have the ability to keep them all, you know, talking specifically to that audience, but keeping a look that is true to the institution as a whole.
And that's a great point, Chris. And to a designer like myself or a team like ours, that's a fantastic challenge to have, because it just makes it fun and enjoyable to come up with all the different varieties we can put together for the different demographics, but still have that challenge to make sure everything looks like it's related.
Excellent. So,
and stay on budget.
yeah, I mean, and that's the big thing. I mean, you know, publications, I have a set budget. You know, if I'm an enrollment manager, I know I have a set budget, and I have a ton of different uses for publications, and I have to make some hard decisions. You know, reaching out to who do I reach out to? How much is every? Do I reach out to a lot of raw prospects? Do I reach out more to applicants? Do I reach out more to transfers or freshmen? Do I use print? Do I use digital? How do I figure out how to make a small budget go a long way? Or even if I have a big budget, how do I know that I'm getting the most out of that?
Well, earlier on we talked about goals and setting up the suite of publications you may need or what deliverables you may need, whether it's not just publications, but like I said, digital media and outdoor signage. If you're unsure of those goals, the right team's going to help you come up with those goals and come up with those deliverables. If you're like, well, I'm not really sure if I need this big old view book, do I need something else? Do I need something smaller? Can I do some of this in print and some of this in digital? The right team's going to be able to let you know, here are the deliverables we think you should do and that we think you should need based on your budget, and they're going to be able to help you stretch it. One of the biggest things we need to think about in today's time during these trends is using a combination of digital and print products. More and more, you'll find that the teen demographic is online all the time, and usually it's with their phone in front of them. And the next slide will show you there is some stats that we have put together based on, their habits. 92% of them go online daily. Of course, 56% of them are online several times a day, and 24% of them go online constantly. So hit them where they live. You don't have to put it all in print anymore. You can put enough in print to drive them to go online and get all the rest of the details. Don't always go for the biggest pieces with all the bells and whistles, all die cuts and foils and all the expensive stuff. Do one really nice piece and limit your print on that piece and expand that piece online. And then the other pieces, they can complement it. They're smaller little pieces that don't cost as much to produce or to send out and to give away. Think about the size of the piece. That goes back with the biggest pieces. More and more I find, and I'm a print person, so I'm kind of old school that way, but more and more you find that we no longer do 36-page view books or even 24-page view books. A lot of times we are being very conservative and we're doing 16-page view books or 20-page view books. And we're even conservative with the size. Now, the smaller the view book, go for the bigger size. I mean, you're saving money on page count. Spend a little bit more with the physical size. You don't have to write it all down and print it. Like I said, let the internet be an extension of your publications. Drive them there. Stay on schedule will help with your budget. You will find a lot of agencies and their printers that you're going to work with will have certain penalties and fees if you go off budget. If you go off your schedule. And unfortunately, that's going to also cost you because sometimes you might get moved in that schedule and lose your spot. And of course, anybody you're working with is going to do everything in their power to keep you on schedule and make sure you get your pieces when you need them. Make your new publications, make the new work that you're working on a priority for you. I know everybody's busy. In today's time, we're all so busy. But the quicker we knock them out, the quicker you have them in hand and you can plan your recruitment season. Some of the pieces you might consider that you need first is like the travel piece, or if you need some postcards in place of the travel piece. Let's get those done up front so those can be printed, and your team doesn't have to worry about making sure they're there when it's time to hit the road. Be organized, which once again goes back to priority and stay on schedule, and trust your agency. The team you pick to work with, your partner, will work with you and make sure to help you know that you're on schedule. They're going to give you a schedule. They're going to remind you. They're there to support you and help you get things accomplished. In regards to stretching your budget and getting all the pieces you want, I have a couple examples. Morgan State, for example. Morgan State came to us looking for a new look and feel, and they wanted quite a few pieces on a budget. Well, we incorporated kind of a new idea, something a little outside the box. Instead of doing a bound view book with multiple pages, we put together a poster. And one side of the poster, you'll see in the bottom left, is a nice, beautiful poster. And the other side folds down to a brochure. So it opens up like a brochure. You get the same content and information you need in a view book and drives you to the website to get more, and you get a poster, and you saved money. We also included, postcard sets those are always inexpensive to create. The travel piece is a smaller travel piece. Instead of doing a 36-inch, long travel piece that folds down to a 6x9, we did a 3-panel short travel piece for them. And then we did 8.5 by 11 brochures instead of doing the 4 and 5 panel brochures, or the saddle stitched, which saddle stitch means stapled brochures. So we were able to provide them with a full suite of publications. We just had to think outside the box and readjust our sizes and readjust how we thought about how the content lays out and how much content goes in the printed pieces.
I think
another example I have. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. If I could, on the Morgan example, I think that you touched on a few things with this one that I think really might impact a lot of people's thinking. If you have a limited budget, or if you're so used to doing something one way, I have to have the beautiful, gigantic view book, but I know it's expensive, so I can't redo it. I have to just reprint it because we don't have the money to do it. If you think about what your goals are, in this case with Morgan's, it was, I really do need to stand out. I need to do something that is going to be visually attractive and get people's attention. And I need something I can distribute pretty widely. And starting from there, let us really come up with things, starting with those conversations, as opposed to just saying, I need to do things the way we've always done them. But as you said earlier, starting with conversations about goal really helps you say, all right, you know what, we can maybe break the mold a little bit and think about things, really reframe the entire conversation and reframe the entire project. So I think that going back to earlier, your preparation statements, starting with what are you trying to achieve can lead to this, and which can lead to budget savings, because maybe your goal doesn't require a big, huge, gigantic bound, new car style view book. Maybe it can be something smaller. So I think that this was a good example of how things really tied together from the beginning of the process through, delivery of a package like this.
And, another challenge we had is we actually also assist clients who maybe don't have a complete photo shot list yet, or all the photography they need. So your partner is going to be able to make the most out of what you have, and they're going to be able to suggest other ways to get more out of it with the budget you have. Texas A&M came to us, and you'll see that we don't have a lot of photography in these pieces, but we took advantage of what we had, and then we started incorporating more graphic type styles or illustration type style into the pieces to expand on the photography. And this was another school that came to us who wanted some pieces, and they were kind of stepping out, and I believe started opening up their recruitment. And we created posters. We did the viewbook poster like we had with Morgan State, and instead of introducing their big mascot on one side, we illustrated out a more graphic style poster, which is also on trend for this demographic and something they can relate to. We also took a very unique approach to the acceptance package, and we have the capabilities to do illustrations. So we illustrated out kind of more of a adult coloring book type poster for them. So there was a bunch of little things that we could do that brings everything together and kind of adds that excitement to the piece, but still stay on budget. Now, the key to a lot of this, though, is being prepared, and being prepared is going to get you where you need to be, dollar-wise and timeline.
So, talk a little bit about that. You've kind of walked through the process, but how do you really know when you're going to go get started? We're going to do this. We're going to do the project, and how do we really know that we've got ourselves set up for success?
Well, it still goes back to those goals. Everything goes back to your goals, and I mentioned a brief. A brief is, we would use it as a creative brief, but it's basically the outline of your job. It's your goals, it's what you're trying to accomplish, it's the timeline, it's the notes of your wish list of what your likes and dislikes are. So stick with your goals. prioritize your deliverables, like I was talking about, as your travel piece, your priority. Do you need that done first? Let's get that knocked out. Have your calendar updated. Be sure that if anything goes off schedule, that your team is providing you with an update to that schedule, and that you can include that into your calendar. Have your questions ready. Be prepared to have a conversation when we're kicking off these jobs. Just say, hey, I need to make sure that you guys are comfortable with working with our brand the way it is, and that you guys understand that these are our limitations. Have your team in place to communicate with that agency. Have a point person in charge. It really works efficiently if you have one person who's gathering the information. If you have a large team who's providing feedback, it's efficient, and it kind of helps resolve any potential errors, because in that way there's not a lot of communication going on, and your designer and your partner is not trying to make sure we're not missing anything. So that just helps with efficiency. Something else that's kind of really important is student and faculty interviews. Have them typed up and ready. That's kind of part of our checklist of things when it comes to assets. A lot of companies, agencies, partners are going to say, hey, if you have some student faculty interviews or some testimonials, that would be great to have, and we can review that for future content. Also, if we come to a campus visit, it's really great to have those set up as well.
That's great. I mean, in December, you've shared a lot of good information today, and really appreciate it. I think we're about at the half-hour mark, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know a lot of folks are joining us on their lunch hour and that sort of thing. So I would love to, if you don't mind, open it up to questions from the audience. So if anybody on board that's been joining us so far this afternoon has any questions, please feel free to type them into that chat box, and we will gladly get to them. We had one question that came up earlier in the session. You made reference to timeline at some point, and to keeping things on track. So could you share a little bit about what a realistic timeline is, or what maybe an ideal timeline is, for developing a publication suite?
I think it varies on the set of pubs you need, and the amount of work and content and where you're starting. If you're starting from scratch and you have a lot of pieces to work on, I think that timeline could probably stretch from 3 to 4 months in total for like all the pieces and the concept work and some of the focus groups and conversations that need to happen, and then also printing. Print times are like usually 2-week turnaround times for printing jobs. The initial concepting part of it and interview process of it, 3 to 4 weeks is great to be able to come up with enough options to review, to come up with the conversations and the interviews that need to happen, to choose the concept that you like and focus group that, and then you're going to dive right on in with doing the work. And based on the pieces, that's the timeline that could be adjusted. I don't really have a hard and fast rule. Like, a viewbook could take anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to write and design. A travel piece could take a week to write and design. Those are just some estimate timelines in regards to actual time frame it takes to do that. Now, of course, you're going to find yourself within your agency or partner schedule and their other workload. But
Gotcha.
just, make sure you get that schedule from them.
Well, and it's you mentioned a couple times in different ways, and I think that it's an important note too, is that if you prioritize, you can prioritize your pieces. It's not an all or nothing or an all at once project. You can really, if you know that you're banging right up against recruitment season and you need to get your recruiters are going out on the road, you need new travel pieces. You may decide not to mail your view book until you've started to get actual inquiries. So maybe you've got a few weeks where you can wait to get your view book in, or if your supplemental pieces like financial aid or honors programs or additional help programs, those might be able to come later in the cycle. So you can sort of stretch your timeline by segmenting the entire project and prioritizing it, right?
Yes, yes. Well, and that's going to help you and your team. So if you're trying to review a bunch of different pieces at one time, you're going to get bogged down. But if you kind of do like I guess the best way to describe it is a round robin. You start with your travel piece, and you get that first draft underway, and you get the revisions underway, and then all you're left with is the smaller little edits and updates. You jump into your view book, right? And then you start doing that process, and then you go into maybe your postcards. The reality to timelines is like travel pieces are quicker than view books, postcards are quicker than travel pieces, but then when you go to print time, view books take longer to print than anybody else because any of the other pieces because they have to be bound most of the time. But yes, spread out your work. It'll help your team and it will help your partner or your agency you're working with, and it will ease everybody's mind about getting the pieces when they need them.
And you've mentioned a few times now print timelines, print concerns, and it made me think of something, and you've also mentioned the idea of splitting between digital and print publications. In many cases, an enrollment office may have multiple partners for different pieces. Have you found it helpful, or have you had experiences where any of the clients that you're working with have a different printer that they're using outside of somebody that you might use with TWG Plus, or a different digital partner while we're working on the print publications? And how do you prefer to work? Is it helpful to understand the whole? Is it helpful to get all of the partners in the room together every so often just to make sure that everybody's on the same page? Or does everybody really just work in silos and that works just fine? What's sort of your ideal scenario if one of our listeners has multiple partners?
The ideal scenario is to get everybody on the same page and let everybody communicate at least once, if not multiple times along the way. We do run across a lot of individuals, or I have run across a lot of individuals who like to print elsewhere or develop elsewhere, but it's important to connect your teams so everybody has the right specs, or everybody knows the right timeline to get something developed out. Like they know when they're going to get the artwork to start developing so they can update their schedule on their end for the delivery. There's specifics when it comes, I'm going to say print again, when it comes to print. If there's like die cuts and specialty pieces, it's best to have your designer communicate with your printer. Now, you will find a lot of times that there's probably a print management fee included, but you're going to get the most success to have your printer and your designers talk. And it's the same thing with if you have other developers, you're going to get the most success out of having your designer and your developers talk. It also makes it efficient with your timelines and your schedules.
That's great. Thanks, December. And I think that pretty much brings us to the end for today. There's no other questions out there, but certainly we want to say thank you to everybody who took a few minutes to join us this afternoon. And if you think of any questions after the webinar ends today and you want to ask us, December's contact information, my contact information are on your screen right now. You could reach out to either of us at TWG Plus. And just so that you know, this is a monthly occasion for us. We try to do some kind of professional development, either webinar, podcast, or blog on a monthly basis. If you follow us on Twitter at TWG Plus, you can get all the information there. We always tweet out about what we're going to be doing. And you can also just visit our website at twgplus.com, where we have our blogs. And we'll also offer this session as a download and some helpful sheets to accompany it with some of the high points of the conversation. You can also find some of our prior webinars there too. So again, thank you all very much for joining us today. Hope you have a great one. Enjoy Thanksgiving next week, and we hope to see you all again soon. Take care.